if there's any point of history where democracy might be at stake, I would say it's now. And the only reason, and if Donald Trump is elected, I hope I'm wrong. This is something that I don't want to be proven right just to get brownie points or whatever you want to call it. Like, do not vote for Donald Trump. Do not vote for Donald Trump. Okay, hold on. Come here. Do not vote for Donald Trump. All right. So I know we have heard that 1,000,001 times, and it almost feels like that story, the little boy who cried wolf, and I'm probably oversimplifying the story, but the little boy who will always say, hey, the wolves are coming or something like that, and people will panic, right? And they will hide their kids, hide their stuff, because the wolves are coming into town to kill everybody, eat everybody. And after so many times of false claims, people at some point just get accustomed to it. Then they start laughing at it. Then they start probably even mocking the little boy, But then at one point, the wolves are actually coming into town, all right? They come in their Cadillacs and just ready to eat everybody, right? And then when that little boy finally says the wolves are coming into town, once again, I know I'm probably 90% wrong with the story, but it's okay. You get the point. People die because they were just conditioned with the false claims, and they have to pay for those consequences of not actually being prepared. So I say all that to say this. If there's any point of history where democracy might be at stake, I would say it's now. And the only reason, and if Donald Trump is elected, I hope I'm wrong. This is something that I don't want to be proven right just to get brownie points or whatever you want to call it. Like, with reading some of the things in the Project 2025, which, trust me, it's boring to read, but like once you start getting into some of the policies in the legislation that they want to pass, it gets a little weird. But that will literally end democracy. Like, it's weird. And if they even implemented half of the policies in that book, we're kind of fucked. I'm not going to even lie. So let's go ahead and listen to Destiny in this broad panel of people trying to express on why you should not vote for Donald Trump.
No matter what points were raised about particular failures of Donald Trump, one thing that you ended all your interviews with, Josiah, was, is there anything that could change your mind and cause you to vote for anyone other than Donald Trump? And all of them very firmly and resolutely, confidently, put their...
And just a heads up, I'm going to give you my personal reasons. I know at the beginning I was a little vague, a little just general, but I actually wrote down notes on why literally the Constitution is at stake. So, stick to at the end to hear my perspective on that.
Their chins up and said, no, there's nothing that can change my mind, nothing at all. So even if it's the case that they would accept that Donald Trump wants to suspend the Constitution, even if we could make the case and they would agree that Donald Trump is the ultimate authoritarian threat in this country, it seems like that's what they want. So, sorry, I know this is long, but it seems like we're finally at the point where we have to make the case, and I want you guys to sell me, so what? What's wrong with authoritarianism? What's so great about democracy? What's so great about our system? Why do we need to convince people that it's worth saving, worth keeping?
Authoritarianism sucks because just look at the countries that it produces. Like, the United States has been the leader of the free world for at least the past 80 years. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that it happens to be that we organize ourselves under democratic principles, that we're capable of making great social change, incorporating lots of different types of people and ideas into our economy, into our society, that we're able to mobilize a ton of different factions of society in ways that other countries can't. Like, all of this can only happen in a democratic regime, in a democratic form of government, where you can look at how people vote, you can track changes in government, you can track public opinion. You know, if somebody were to say, what does America feel about the war in Ukraine? What does America feel about Israel? What does America feel about whatever? You can look at our elections, you can look at our primaries, and you can tell. If I were to ask you, what does the average Russian citizen think about something? That's a whole project to figure out. What does the average Chinese citizen think about a thing? That's very difficult to figure out, because you've got your single party, you've got your single leaders, you've got what they say, and who knows what the public opinion is on a thing. And then when you look at all the different types of people and peoples that get incorporated into, I think, liberal democracies, you can just see like cool things that you don't really see in other countries. You know, one example I brought up was, you know, on Fresh and Fit, arguing with a bunch of guys who argued for some weird caliphate or whatever, that they wanted to rule the United States. You know, I'm sitting next to Myron, who's like I think, descendant of a Sudanese immigrant. You've got Sneeko, who, you know, I think his dad came from Haiti. You've got me, my mom came from Cuba. You've got Fresh. I don't know where his parents come from. Fresh is a guy. But like it's like the fact that we're all doing this podcast here in like a high rise in like Miami, it's such a cool, unique American thing, and a uniquely American thing. And I think that the conditions for these things to be created for foreigners to come into this country, and to explore, you know, society or capitalism or business in the way that they want, I just think that's really uniquely American. I think it was JJ, or it might have been somebody else that gave me this quote, but one of the cool things about America, and I really believe this, that despite all of our flaws, I think America allows you to be the best version of yourself better than any other country would allow.
That's what I'll...
So it is honestly mind-blowing that the Republican Party, and especially Trump himself, would praise individuals like Putin. And if you're too young to know who he is, please just look up the history of Russia, who Putin is. Xi Jinping, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Praising people like that, or not Xi Jinping, Kim Jong-un, or whatever his name is, praising people like that is weird. And Republicans either go along with it, or they just ignore him and be like, no, he's just playing around. He's just, you know, just trying to sweet talk them, because that's just how you sweet talk people like that. Like, if Obama said half the dictatorial type comments like Trump, it would be game over for someone like Obama. Not even close. If Joe Biden accidentally murmured something like that on a podium or in some interview, it would be a field day in the media. But when Trump says it, that's okay. That's cool. Like, do you not understand what restriction of freedom of speech really looks like? Just read a little bit. YouTube's on the videos, and that's the person you're voting for? Oh, man, people are weird. Man.
I was going to say all of that.
Did you like that quote, Stephen? Did it come from you?
Yeah, I was going to say if you liked it, it came from me, but no, I think it came from JJ.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that was an excellent answer, Adam. Thank you very much for that contribution.
No problem.
That's one perspective. The other perspective about Elon Musk allows mis and disinformation. I think many people hold the perspective that Elon Musk is not being the arbiter of what is the truth and what is mis and disinformation. If it's all allowed, then he's not the one in charge of deciding what is or is not truth. Do you think there's any merit to that?
There is absolutely no thing that you participate in life where you're trying to sort noise from accurate signal, where more signal or more noise is helpful. And it's a whole other conversation about like freedom of speech and these kind of like epistemic values that lead you in like good information gathering directions. But I think people have this really bad notion that if you want the truth to rise to the top, you just need more speech. Freedom of speech is great. We just need more speech and more speech and more speech. And that's just not true. It's not true anywhere. And the noise and the mess of what exists right now on the internet, especially in places like X, where people can lie with impunity, including the owner, who is now shamelessly in full support of, Donald Trump, who probably lies more than any politician person I've ever seen in my entire life. And this is in the same universe where Santos exists. It's absolutely insane. And I think people, I don't know what the conversation could even begin to look like, because when I say, misinformation is a huge problem online, conservatives and Democrats will both cheer and applaud for exactly the opposite reason. So there's something that we're going to have to do to approach and change how we sort through what exists online, what's allowed to exist online, or how people are allowed to propagate information online, because the current environment is never going to produce something good for democracy.
So Mr. Destiny once again said that perfectly, flawlessly. And a lot of people, especially when social media started to actually do its thing. I'm old enough to kind of see the growth of social media. A lot of people will say, if you want to combat the liars, the conspiracy theories out there, we just have to combat it with truth and facts and like it's some sort of Marvel movie or something. But what people, I don't want to say people fail to understand, because you can see this through the type of media people watch, the type of music, the movies, and just what people are drawn to. People are drawn to drama. People are drawn to conflict and just whatever sounds sexy. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, facts, honesty isn't sexy. That's not going to draw in viewers. And when you mix in incentives like money, you get views, and that incentivize being monetized and getting paid for that. You're not incentivized to tell the truth. You're not incentivized to share facts and data and statistics. You're incentivized to say what is going to draw people to your channel, to your media, whichever, if you're mainstream media, if you're some sort of articles, newspaper. I mean, people don't read newspaper no more, but you're only going to create content that is going to draw views. So if that means you got to come up with the craziest conspiracies, if you got to come up with the craziest stories, it doesn't matter, because you're chasing views. And unfortunately, as we've seen, misinformation and disinformation, if it's on purpose or unintentional, it has real world consequences. And that's what we're starting to see, throughout COVID, and even now with the political candidate, Donald Trump. It's mind blowing why people would want to vote for him.
I don't think,
especially with AI.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it. It was either Matt Beat or Huey, but they talked about how essentially democracies are destroyed by divisive realities and mistrusting one another and misinfo, whereas authoritarian regimes are built up and reinforced by these systems, right? And so I think probably lots of people have seen Ryan McBeth on Twitter being at some point misinfo, Russian bots and stuff, are these considered armed combatants to some degree? Because it's so destructive for a democracy to create a reality where you can't trust your neighbor and you don't even live in the same world, where Democrats are now creating hurricanes to hit Georgia and stuff. How do you even begin to wrestle with ideas in a democratic way?
Well, I was asking the Trump supporters yesterday. I have a bunch of clips of this. I go, would you rather vote for Kamala Harris or Vladimir Putin? A lot of them said Putin. I said the same thing with Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un or Kamala Harris? A lot of them said, I'd stay home. I said, what if you're the tie-breaking vote? They said, I can't vote for Kamala. How much do you think Vladimir Putin is salivating when he sees that he waged an invisible war, essentially, without wasting any money on ground troops, and he has tricked half of our population with the help of Donald Trump into thinking all of this, that Vladimir Putin would be a better leader than Kamala Harris?
I mean, what was the...
And that is the crazy part. Once again, just having this conversation 10 years ago would not be the same. asking someone, would you rather vote for democracy or dictatorship in the form of Vladimir Putin? It wouldn't ask this question in the 90s. It wouldn't even be a conversation. You asking that question would seem a little suspect. Like, who do you work for? Why are you asking me such crazy questions? But for American citizens to even mutter out of their mouth, they would rather vote for Putin than Kamala Harris, just shows you how just insane people have become. And it's all because of disinformation. It's sad. Like I can't even fathom what to describe these people. Trade democracy for dictate.
Quote, wasn't there a quote leak recently where Donald Trump was looking at Kim and he said, like, when he rises or when he does whatever, his people clap.
I want my people to do that.
my people to do that. Well, yeah. Well, like when he was president, he talked to the Joint Chiefs of Staff and DOD officials. He's like, what about military parades, which is stuff that they do in communist countries? It's absolutely insane. But on that, kind of piggybacking off what Adam just said, this is why, for those of you who've heard me occasionally in Steve and Stream ask the question, and it is Socratic. It's like, if we experienced, God forbid, some sort of terrorist event on a Democrat's watch, would Republicans rally around a Democratic president? If you recall, those of you who were around during 9/11, the expectation was if you're a Democrat, you shut the bleep up and you just rally behind the Republican. It doesn't matter what the policy differences are. That was the expectation. I am convinced, as I imagine many of you are, that in a counterfactual where it happens under a Democrat, you would not get that support from Republican, not just Republican voters, but Republican politicians. They would use it as an opportunity to undermine the Democratic president. And that's an asymmetry that we have to really push back on.
And we don't even have to go back that far. Like just recently, the Hurricane Helene ran through Florida. Over 200 people died, millions of dollars in destruction, and we're literally politicizing a natural disaster. This is not something a democratic government can whip up and just make happen. They didn't create policy to make a hurricane come through Florida. But for whatever reason, we know what reason, it's being politicized. Instead of saying, hey, let's take this moment as something we need to unite and solve together, because there's actually people hurting, people missing, just property, businesses, just lives are literally destroyed because of something that humans, that's a whole nother conversation, but we can't control, because that's why they call it a natural disaster. It's naturally, okay? But we politicize that, and it's sad. And like you said, if something was to happen on a scale of 9/11 and we had a democratic government, it would be politicized. And once again, it's sad, bruh. That's sad.
I do want to say that despite the fact that it has just objectively gotten just way crazier in the last 6-8 years in terms of misinformation, confusion, obfuscation, the liberal coalition in this country is doing a really good job. For the last 6 years, it's been sustained wins. I'm optimistic about this November, and it's in no small part because of people like you participating. So give yourself a round of applause once again for doing that. It's important. It matters. Good job.
All right, Hutch fishing for the claps. I see where you're at. I see what you're doing. Okay. But we all agree that people lie on social media, and that's the biggest confusion, because everybody calls everybody a liar. We see the no-use strategy, right? Donald Trump, I believe, tried to coup the government and steal the election in 2020. And what happened? Joe Biden endorsed Kamala Harris. We didn't do a primary. What's the word that popped up out of conservatives' mouths?
Coup.
They call it a coup. It's ridiculous. There's no comparison.
Man.
But that's the strategy. And to the uninitiated, how do you even, start to tell the truth? We agree that people lie, and that's where the confusion starts. But what do you do about that? What are the solutions?
I think it has to start in the media, whether that's people hosting debates, whether that's media officials covering like events. I think in the beginning, people were a little bit scared about coming off as too unhinged about Donald Trump. Well, in the very beginning, it was funny. People said, we have to be careful we don't normalize this. But then in the media's, I guess, quest for legitimacy, they stopped criticizing Trump because they were worried that they were coming off as too unhinged. And somehow conservatives managed to get a grapple on the entire narrative on the liberal side as well. And I think that people in media need to be less afraid of calling out the insanity on the conservative side and just hardcore fixating on that. Like, you can't make concessions anymore to these insane people. Like, you have to be willing to lay, like, in a fact-based world and to just stick there. Like, if you want to have conversations, I was talking earlier with Josiah, if you want to have conversations about, like, the FEMA response and everything going on for the hurricane, well, let's start with some quotes from Republican governors about Biden's response. Do you acknowledge that these quotes are real? Like, before you even move on to any crazy thing about Biden, suiting up like Iron Man to block helicopters from rescuing people, like, it needs to be like a grounded in reality conversation, because conservatives are just completely and totally in another dimension right now.
I mean, you say that, but the media is everything. You can, if there's a narrative that you want or that you like, there is media out there that showcases that, and that will obfuscate, that will refuse to cover a story, and will hyper-focus and create their own narrative for any piece of information that's out there.
Deport them.
I mean, we can't have that, right? In fact, don't clap for that. I mean, whatever. You can clap for whatever you want, but
I think there are some
no,
basic
don't
things.
clap for that. I command you.
I think there are basic things that need to happen on media that I think could change. One, I think that there should be law. I think that nationalities should be forced to be shown for accounts that are operating on social media in the United States that do media reporting. Like, if you follow 10 accounts for news and this law passes and you find out that 9 out of 10 of those accounts are run by foreign nationals, I think that's important information that's important for an American to know. I think there are other steps that you could take in that direction. I think that income sources should be disclosed from people that are doing major media in the United States. I think it's insane that you've got people that are earning millions of dollars from who knows what companies that are just like blatantly lying to the American public. I think that there are steps that you can take to move in that direction, but we need like a culture change.
All right. So like Destiny said, and say what you want about Destiny, I think like 90% of the things he says is agreeable, correct. Of course, have conversation, but for the most part, pretty solid guy. I do believe something needs to be done in holding anyone who claims to be in media, even people like myself, responsible for the information they put out. But let me tell you my reasons on why Donald Trump is bad for this country, and especially with Project 2025 being out. I know a lot of people are going to say, no, Donald Trump has nothing to do with that, blah, blah, blah. His name is mentioned over 300 times in this thick-ass book for a reason. And like I said, I don't think Trump read it. Trump doesn't read anything, okay? He barely reads tweets, okay? But for someone who's mentioned that many times, obviously he is the definition of a useful idiot. And to me, in my opinion, the people who are actually the authors of that book, and a lot of people who were in his administration and currently still is, those people are the ones who's going to force Trump's hands into doing these crazy things that we went over plenty of times on this channel, what's involved in Project 2025. But here is one thing to me. First off, the Constitution, the First Amendment, everything that, the one amendment that everybody seems to be crying over, that, Joe Biden's going to take their First Amendment rights and blah, blah, blah. Let's go ahead and read exactly what the First Amendment is. Let me pull this up here. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and the petition a government for a redress of grievances. So, for a lot of people who don't know what that is, trust me, I'm breaking this down like a fraction. The first portion is the government can't create or support an official religion. All through that book, Project 2025, they want to establish a religion. And I'm a Christian man myself. I mean, I don't really associate myself with the pretend Christians, but I wouldn't even want this country to be a Christian nation, because I believe people have the right to believe and work in their religion as they want, as long as it's not infringing on other people's rights in their space. Believe who you want to believe in nobody. I don't care, as long as you don't force me to believe in what you believe. We good, baby. You know, the second portion of that is people can practice any religion they want. The third portion is anyone has the right to say what they want. How many times, and this leads into the fourth part, the press can report news and opinions freely. How many times have Donald Trump said he's going to put his political enemies, those who on CNN and all these other news outlets, he's going to put them in prison? Once again, let Joe Biden slip up with his old ass to say something like that. People would literally be in arms. Literally. But no, when Trump says it, that's not what he really meant. He didn't really mean that, what he really meant was he's going to blah, blah, some excuse, some talking point. But you're okay with that. Not me, but you're okay with that. Sounds a little dictatorial to me. People can gather peacefully to protest or meet. Once again, throughout the 4, 6, 8 years, how many times have people, with Kyle Rittenhouse, perfect example, how many times have Donald Trump threatened the safetyhood of people who are peacefully protesting? Okay, don't worry, I will wait for an answer. And 6, citizens can ask the government to fix problems. To me, that's a no-brainer. That's literally what the functioning of the government is supposed to be. It can walk and chew gum at the same time. It's not only for this, it's not only for that. The government has plenty of functionability, if that's not a word, it is now, to do multiple things at once. It can defend us. It can do national trading. It can take care of its more vulnerable citizens. It can make sure the economy is running fine. It can make sure everyone's getting paid. It can make sure this. That is what a democracy government is supposed to and have the ability to do. But once again, read any portion of this Project 2025 and you will understand. My fear is Trump will get into office, be the idiot that he is, writing his signature on whatever he wants to write his fancy signature on, and it's going to get us in a lot deeper shit. It's going to be a lot worse than what I think people expect it to be. And once again, we had a Democratic Party crying wolf for so many years. I can remember when, Bush was getting into office, Democrats saying, hey, this election is the most important election in your lifetime. We got to protect democracy. They said that with Republicans saying that with Obama saying that with Trump the first time, or Clinton with Trump, and now with Joe Biden, and now that shit is literally about to hit the fan. I think this might be the time the wolves come into town. But once again, if you think I'm lying, if you think, anything that I'm saying is infactual, let me know in the comments down below. And like always, let's have that conversation.
Bye.